Hi, I'm Vivian, and I'm going to be talking about feeling lost in homeschooling. Starting homeschooling can feel overwhelming, but you're not doing it wrong. I share what helped me get through the self-doubt, burnout, and those days where you feel you just can't do it. So if you're feeling lost in homeschooling, you're not alone, and this is the episode for you. I'm going to talk about the exact moment that I felt lost, what I thought homeschooling would look like versus the reality of it, a turning point for me, which happened to be a piece of advice that was given to me by a friend, how I finally found my rhythm, and then words that I wish someone had told me when I started homeschooling. For me, homeschooling was not originally planned. A friend had suggested it over dinner. She had mentioned it several times before, but this time I finally heard her because I happened to be looking for a change in my children's education. From the very beginning, I felt completely lost. Day one, I knew nothing about homeschooling. I was scared, clueless, and overwhelmed. And I remember sitting at home with not even one book, no curriculum, no lesson plan, thinking, what have I just agreed to do? I had no idea what I was doing, and my biggest fear was leaving some gap in their education that maybe they wouldn't have had if they had gone to traditional school. So failing them weighed heavily on me. In addition, I had this picture in my mind of what homeschooling looked like. I thought it was moms that turned their homes into well-run schoolhouses. Everything was so structured, graceful, and put together, and I thought I had to be like that too. The reality of it was that I struggled. It was messy, and I didn't have it all figured out. I didn't have it put together. I was anxious about doing it wrong and constantly afraid I wasn't going to cover everything they might have otherwise learned in school. Plus, my homeschool was not always structured, and it wasn't run on the planned schedule, which sometimes ended up being a good thing, but it was nothing like what I had imagined, and almost every day I felt like I was barely keeping up. In the first few weeks, I was constantly calling homeschool moms with questions. I was trying to alleviate my fears of doing it wrong. Everyone was encouraging. No one ever told me exactly how to do it, but they did give me advice. And them not telling me exactly how to do it gave me a clue. They couldn't tell me exactly how to do it because it was mine to figure out. Because we aren't like anyone else. What works for one family doesn't necessarily work for another family. The turning point came for me when a friend told me a piece of advice that ended up being something I've held on to over the years. She told me, you are the best teacher for your children. She reminded me that no one loves or knows my kids the way that I do. And that line has helped me more times than I can count. It's something that I know deep down, even on the days I feel like I'm completely winging it. It reminds me of what's true when everything feels unstable. I know my kids. I know when they're tired. I know when they're trying, when they're shutting down. No one else is going to care about them and their growth and well-being like I do. No one else will stick with them through the good days and the hard ones. It helps me see the bigger picture. I figure out that I'm not trying to replicate school at home. What I am doing is I'm building something deeper. A life of learning, a relationship built on trust, and the freedom to grow into who they are, not just what a system says they should be. It also helps shut down that voice in my head that says, I'm not qualified. I may not know everything, but I'm willing to figure it out. And more importantly, I'm willing to walk through it with them. And that matters more than the perfect lesson plan. So when I hit those hard days, the ones that are messy, the emotional ones, the ones where you wonder, are we even doing enough? That truth anchors me. I'm not homeschooling because it's easy. I'm doing it because it matters, and I really am the best person for this job. So know that you are the best teacher for your children. It reminds you, you know your kids better than anyone else. You know the look in their eyes when they're overwhelmed. You know when they need a break. when they need a challenge, when they need a hug, before they can even begin to focus. That knowing can't be taught. You may not have a teaching degree, but you've been studying your kids since the moment they were placed in your arms. That matters, and that counts. That advice also helps you stop measuring yourself against unrealistic standards. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you need to do things the way a school would, or that you have to prove that you're not falling behind. But knowing that you're the best teacher for your kids can pull you back to center. You don't have to do it like anyone else. You don't have to be a classroom teacher. And what you have to know is that you're their teacher and you can shape it in a way that fits them. When I was homeschooling, I was learning right alongside them. And that's not a flaw. It's actually a gift. Knowing you're the best teacher for your kids keeps the relationship front and center. The truth is, homeschooling is more than just checking off the boxes. It's about building a life together. It's about conversations in the car, late night questions, and noticing what excites them. And when things go off track, and they often do, I always come back to this truth, that the connection is the curriculum on some days. That relationship is what makes the learning stick. It can give you something to hold on to on the hard days because, let's be honest, there are days when everything feels like it's falling apart. The lesson flops, the moods clash, and you're questioning everything. That's when I come back to this phrase and breathe. I'm still the best person for this job, even when it's messy, even when it's hard, because no one else is going to show up for them like you will. Knowing you're the best teacher for your kids can keep you grounded in the bigger why. I'm sure you didn't choose this path because it was easy, but because you believe there's a better way, a slower, more intentional way, a way that honors who they are, not just what someone expects them to be. And that phrase reminds you that you don't have to have it all figured out today. You just need to keep showing up. Show up, keep learning, keep loving them through it. So, yeah, this isn't just a motivational phrase. It's been a lifeline. It's what I come back to when I'm tired or unsure or overwhelmed, because the truth is I am the best teacher for my children, but not because I'm perfect, because I'm theirs. I realized I wanted the very best for them, and I would stop at nothing to give it to them. Eventually, I slowly found my rhythm. And what was the key? It was the realization that I did not need to chase perfection. I started letting go. I stopped trying to avoid every mistake, and I started to see failures as part of the process. We learned together. We adjusted, and I learned to give myself a lot of grace. In doing so, I gave my kids a more honest, flexible, and human education. So, some examples of how I did this is that when I started, I thought I had to make it feel exactly like a traditional classroom. I thought I had to recreate school at home. I had this mental image of desks in rows, structured daily schedule, a tight academic routine. I even printed out schedules and made individualized planners and tried to follow them very closely. I believed at the time that if it didn't look like a school, it wasn't a real education. But very quickly, I realized my kids were not thriving in that setup, and neither was I. The rigidity made everything feel forced and stressful. So eventually, I let go of that picture-perfect classroom model, and I started paying attention to what really worked for us. I realized that learning started happening when we were on the couch, in the kitchen, outside, at all different times of the day. Once I allowed that freedom, our days felt more natural and my kids became more engaged. In the beginning, I also overscheduled. I filled every single block of our day with a plan. Math, reading, science, crafts, chores, nature walks, play dates, you name it. I thought if our schedule was full, it meant we were doing enough. I measured success by how productive the day looked like on paper. But all that did was overwhelm us, especially me. There was no space to breathe or enjoy what we were doing. I constantly felt behind. So eventually, I started creating a more flexible schedule and leaving a lot of open space in our days. We were doing less, but going deeper with what we were learning. And I realized that quality always mattered more than quantity. And letting go of that packed schedule gave us room to rest, to explore, and to be present. Another thing is I was reluctant to ask for help. When I decided to homeschool, there was a lot of negative opinions about my decision, and I felt like I had something to prove. So even in subjects I didn't love, like history and languages other than English, I avoided asking for help. I thought that as a homeschool mom, I was supposed to know everything, and admitting I didn't felt like I was failing. So I pushed through lessons I didn't enjoy, hoping that the kids wouldn't notice how disinterested I felt. Eventually, I did accept that I didn't have to be an expert in everything, and what I didn't love would filter through in the way that I taught. If I didn't love it, I wasn't going to bring joy and passion to the subject. And then they didn't love it either. But someone who did enjoy those subjects would bring those areas alive for them. So I started seeking out resources, videos, online tutors, co-ops, and even trading with friends who were stronger in those subjects. For example, I organized a trade with my friend who taught them Chinese in exchange for me teaching her kids grammar, something that I was interested in. I realized that it didn't make me a weaker teacher, it made me a smarter one, and it made learning more enjoyable for all of us. Another thing that I had done back then, in the beginning, was I was very rigid about curriculum goals. I was obsessed with finishing the curriculum on time. Every lesson, every page, every benchmark. I tied our success to how closely we followed the plan. We were also with an independent study charter school that was pushing for school at home rather than homeschooling. So the external pressure was also there, but I did feel like if we skipped something, I would feel guilty. I believe progress counted only if we could measure it on paper. Eventually, I realized that curriculum was a tool and not a ruler. And I started using it to support learning rather than to control it. So we would skip sections that didn't serve us, and we would linger longer on topics that sparked interest. And sometimes I'd just follow the kids' leads entirely. And guess what? At the end of the day, they still learned. And they probably retained it way better than if I had rushed through to make sure that all the topics were covered. Lastly, I used to completely ignore self-care. I thought I had to be some perfect homeschool mom, and in doing so, I thought taking time for rest or fun was selfish. So I put everything into caring for and teaching my children. I was planning, teaching, gardening, cooking, and managing the household, and completely ignoring my own needs. I was running on empty. Eventually, the burnout caught up, and I realized I couldn't pour into my kids if I was drained. So I started protecting my own time, a step at a time. I'd start reading for pleasure, going for walks, setting boundaries, even saying no sometimes. I realized it wasn't weakness to set aside time to take care of me. And when I cared for myself, I had more to give my family. I think self-care is so needed for women, but unfortunately it's something that many of us do not practice, seeing as we have likely not had that behavior modeled to us. So today, compared to the beginning, our homeschool looks completely different. There is a loose framework, but always lots of freedom to explore and to pivot. It's not perfect by any means, but it's real. And it's working precisely because I don't stick to a rigid plan. We've created space for growth, for grace, and for joy. So if I could go back, I wish someone had told me this, that you don't need to be like the credentialed teachers in schools to succeed, because you're not them, and that's okay. The structure that I built at home is completely different, and so am I. I didn't have a degree in education, but I became an educator anyway. And today, I can honestly say I'm proud of how my kids have turned out. They're curious, passionate, and always learning. And that's all I ever wanted for them. So, if you're feeling lost in homeschooling right now, if you're overwhelmed or second-guessing yourself, wondering if you've made a huge mistake, I just want to say this. You're not alone. So many of us start this journey with big hopes and zero clue of what we're actually doing. We picture something polished, peaceful, and perfectly structured. And what we get instead is messy mornings, half-finished lessons, kids melting down, and our own doubts showing up in full force. But hear me when I say this. You're not doing it wrong just because it feels hard. You are learning. And more importantly, so are your kids. If no one has told you this yet, let me be the one. You are the best teacher for your children. Not because you know everything and not because you always get it right, but because you know them and because you care more than anyone else possibly could. Because you're willing to grow alongside them, to get it wrong and try again, to keep showing up even on the hard days. So let go of perfection. Let go of the pressure to do it like anyone else. You don't have to be the Pinterest mom or the classroom mimic. You just have to be you. Be present, honest, willing. You're not falling behind. You're finding your way. And I promise it's okay if you're still trying to figure it out. So am I. We all are. And on the days it doesn't feel like it, come back to the truth. You are enough. Your love, your effort, your presence, it's enough. That's what makes the difference. That's what they'll remember. And that's what turns this whole messy, beautiful journey into something that lasts.